Hello, everybody, and welcome. We're so glad that you could join us for another Bird-Friendly Friday. So today we're going to be discussing nesting at Riverlands and at home. And we would like to welcome everybody that's tuning in the St. Louis region and beyond. Now, as we adapt to a more virtual world, we hope that these Bird-Friendly Fridays will spark some fun ideas on how you can help and enjoy birds at home. And we hope that these are a nice addition to your Friday afternoons. So today I'm joined with Michelle Wiegand, our education manager at the Audubon Center, as well as Tara Holman, our conservation science associate. As a reminder, there will be a live Q&A following this presentation, and you can post any questions that you have for us as presenters in the comments below. Next. So again, you probably noticed it's spring. Spring is here. And that means it's nesting season. So this is prime time for us to be seeing birds nesting in our area. So birds and their nests can come in all shapes and sizes, and birds can use various materials to build their nests in many different places. So let's look at some examples. So you could have a cup nest in a tree. Perhaps you are building a nest along a cliff using mud. So here you can see a picture of a cliff swallow peeking its head out of its nest. Or perhaps you're nesting on the ground in some sand or gravel. Or up in a tree with large sticks. Or at the very top of a tree with thinner sticks. So today we're going to be discussing several things. First, we're going to highlight what's happening at Riverlands right now, what birds are nesting on the sanctuary, as well as what monitoring programs are in progress. We're also going to be looking into what's happening in your own backyard. So we'll look at some nesting birds locally in our area. And then also, how can you support nesting birds?
All right, so we're going to start with what's happening now at Riverlands. So like Emily said, we're first going to go over a couple of birds that are nesting at Riverlands right now, and then we're going to go over a couple of the nesting projects that Audubon and our partners are taking part in at Riverlands. So the first bird that we're going to focus on is our Baltimore Oriole. And Baltimore Orioles have really unique and a very impressive nests. And they actually kind of just look like a bag or a sock that's hanging from a tree. And one of the really impressive things is they actually weave those nests using plant fibers and spider silk and other items that they find lying around. So you can see here the female bald Baltimore Oriole actually weaving that nest with her mouth and her beak. The other cool thing about Baltimore Orioles is they do have some favorite trees to nest in. So around the sanctuary, the common ones are going to be our cottonwoods, but they also prefer elm and maples. But you can see in the picture on the left, once those trees really start to leaf out, those nests are well camouflaged. And especially with cottonwoods, which are such massive trees, those nests can just really blend in well. So I encourage you to, next time you're up at Riverlands, take a look up when you're near a cottonwood tree and see what kind of nests you find, and you might spot one of these Baltimore Orioles. All right, so the next one we're going to highlight is our killdeer, which is a small shorebird, and they actually nest on the ground. And if you know killdeer, you love them. They do nest on the ground, and because of that, they are prone to some particular predation. They will be found along gravel roads. They might be found outside of our center, just in the rocky area near our garden. We find them along trails or in mulched areas at the center. But like I said, because they are very exposed on the ground, they can be vulnerable to predation. But to fight that, they have developed some very interesting behavioral adaptations to try to protect their nest. So there's a good photo of the actual killdeer nest and eggs. And we're going to show you a video of what it looks like when a killdeer might actually feel threatened near their nest. So as you could see there, the killdeer will make a lot of noise and a lot of movement if they feel threatened. And so they really let their presence be known. And then they will actually do what's called this broken wing display, where they'll pretend that they're injured and they'll run away from the nest to try to lure predators toward the adult bird and away from the nest. And so if you've been to Riverlands recently, or if you go there soon and you see this type of behavior, it might mean that you are coming upon a killdeer nest. And so do kind of steer clear and watch your step as you go.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Now let's dive into what nesting projects are actually going on at the sanctuary now that we learned a little bit more about some of our nesting birds that we have. So a very special summer visitor that we receive is our least tern. And least terns are the smallest of all terns. And so they will typically breed on sandy or gravelly beaches and sandbars along rivers or lakes. And for nesting, they really just have a small depression in the sand or gravel where they can lay their eggs. So if you take a look at this photo, you can see this is actually a picture of their nest. And so they are just kind of scooping out a small depression in the ground, and that's where they're laying their eggs. And so when we go back to that photo, you can see just how cute those little chicks are. And it looks like he's reaching out for a hug there. And so you can typically find these at Riverlands between late April and September. I personally haven't spotted any at the sanctuary yet, but they could be arriving any day now. Now, unfortunately, there has been a decline in the least tern populations in the 1900s. In fact, they were actually listed as an endangered species in 1985. So let's find out why. So because the Mississippi River was once very shallow, there was plenty of breeding and nesting habitat along sandbars along our Mississippi River. And you can kind of see that example on our left. So this is a shallow river. You can see many, many sandbars. It's much wider. And so, however, in the 1900s, because there was a major need for navigation, for travel, and also exporting goods, the Mississippi River now maintains a 9-foot deep channel. And this deep channel really just allows large barges and trade to occur. And so with a deeper river, that's going to mean less sandbars, which is going to mean less least tern breeding and nesting. So this is a big concern. However, the Army Corps of Engineers has worked really hard and created a solution that benefits all involved. So to mitigate the habitat loss, like these sandbars along the Mississippi River, the Riverlands Migratory Bird Sanctuary has come up with a solution. Beginning in 2010, Riverlands began the interior least tern barge. And there's plenty of pictures on the slide here for you. And you can see this barge today at the sanctuary on Teal Pond. So right when you turn into the sanctuary, it's actually one of the first things that you get to see. As you can see in the photo on the bottom left, this barge is fortified with fencing that helps protect these terns from predation. Every summer, this barge is also filled with sand and pieces of wood for the terns to find protection. So basically, they've created these private beaches for our terns, and the best part is they're working. So this past nesting season in 2019 was one of our most successful nesting seasons yet, and it's very exciting. So I'll share some of that data with you. So in 2019, there was a total of 47 nests. And of those 47, we had 74 eggs. Around more than 60 chicks were actually observed throughout the entire season. And of those chicks, 46 were banded. And these numbers can mostly be contributed to the historic flooding that we got last year. I'm sure you guys remember all the flooding we had between May and July. And these high waters likely pushed a lot of these terns off the river. And luckily, they decided to use this barge. Now this season has made history in other ways as well. So if we see this next photo, we actually recorded our first sighting of a previously banded tern chick returning to Riverlands. So many years ago, this chick was banded, and we are now seeing it return back as an adult and nesting there. So this is really a great sign, and it suggests that artificial nesting is effective for these terns. So one of our newest monitoring projects is the American Kestrel monitoring. And the American Kestrel is our smallest falcon in North America. And their populations as a whole have been on a decline in the US. Over the past 50 years, there has been a population decrease of about half, which is a huge number. So unfortunately, the reason for their decline is mostly unknown. Now, kestrels are cavity nesting birds, and they prefer habitat like pastures, agricultural fields, and short grass prairies. And because of this, this really makes Riverlands an ideal place to monitor these kestrels because of the abundance of habitat that we have. And for this reason, you can often see kestrels on the sanctuary year-round, day to day. Now, monitoring these kestrels can help us get a better understanding of kestrel population trends in our region of St. Louis. And that way we can have a better idea of what's causing these populations to decline and what can we really do to mitigate some of those hazards that they're facing. And thanks to the support of our partners, St. Louis Audubon Society, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, World Bird Sanctuary, and Ameren, Missouri, we've actually installed 10 kestrel boxes in 2020. So on this photo here, you can see Tara Holman installing one of those boxes. And luckily, we currently have one nesting pair of kestrels. So in this photo, this was taken, just a few weeks ago, or just last week. This is an adult kestrel in the box, and the next photo shows you 4 kestrel eggs. So just the fact that this is our first season putting out these boxes and we're already having a nesting pair is a really great success, and we're really looking forward to what more is to come with that. All right, so the eastern bluebird is yet another bird that we monitor on the sanctuary. It also happens to be our state bird. Now, unfortunately, the eastern bluebird populations also have been reaching a low, and this was in around the 1960s. And these birds really lost a lot of their habitat when forests were cut for farming, but also developing residential areas. And so these birds are our secondary cavity nesters. So since their beak and their feet are too small, they aren't really quite strong enough to dig out nesting holes. So a lot of times they will rely on pre-existing nesting holes that could have been created by bigger birds like a woodpecker. Now, the eastern bluebird has actually transitioned from relying on those natural cavities to man-made cavities, like this bluebird box that you'll see in this next photo. And so because these are secondary cavity nesters, they really do rely on man-made cavities. And so this further shows us the importance of nest box monitoring, because this really is helping us understand their populations. And by monitoring any changes that we might see, this could help us better understand what's really affecting the species. Now, this year, we've also already had some success. So we have 3 complete nests built in our 8 bluebird boxes. And one of them, as Tara had checked just 2 days ago, already has bluebird eggs laid in them. So we do have a nesting pair, and we're excited to continue to monitor this and see kind of where this is going. So now from here, we are actually going to cut over to our conservation science associate, Tara Holman, and she's actually going to take us on the sanctuary and show us what it's like to monitor birds and what all kind of that entails.
having these nest boxes up for bluebirds and kestrels is really important, especially since both bluebirds and kestrels are cavity nesters. That's why we have these cute little boxes. And a lot of the natural cavities that you would find out in the wild are either over competed for, because there's a lot of birds looking to use cavities, just because there really aren't that many left. And so providing these boxes gives these birds another way to produce, breed, and boost their population. I'm Tara Homan, and I'm the Conservation Science Associate here at the Audubon Center at Riverlands. Today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we go about monitoring our 2 nest boxes that we have here out on the Riverlands Sanctuary. One of them being bluebird boxes, and the other one being our American kestrel boxes. So, in checking our bluebird boxes, what we try to do is come in from one point off of the trail, slowly walk up to the box quietly. Before we open it, sometimes I'll knock, just in case there's any adult inside. Open it up, look inside, and what we're looking for here is, of course, who built the nest. So what's the nesting material if we didn't see a bird in the area or come out of the box? What's the makeup of the nest? Are there any eggs? Are there any chicks? If an adult is around, what behavior is it displaying? Is it staying around? Is it yelling at us? Is it staying in the box while we're checking? All of this is important, trying to figure out where they are in that breeding cycle. Once we have that information, we'll close the box, walk away, and leave it be. And we do this twice a week, especially when breeding picks up, just so that we have that constant go of how they're progressing, since birds do grow up so quickly. I'm going to show you how we go about checking our American kestrel boxes. So if you can see it behind us, we have one of our boxes here, all of which, or the majority, are fixed to these utility poles. So what we end up doing is we walk up to it quietly with our big endoscope here fixed to a pole, and we will place the camera inside the box, take a video or a photo of the progress inside, and then report that later to our online database. Again, we're looking for who's using the box. Is there any activity from a kestrel? Any activity from non-natives like starlings who also use these boxes? And then again, count if there's any chicks, any eggs, if anything's changed since the last time we checked. Again, we'll report all of this into our designated databases, and then we'll have a good idea of how breeding birds are doing at Riverlands. If anyone at home wants to start their own bluebird box trail, whether you have a large piece of property or if you just want to set up one, I highly recommend going online and looking up information from the North American Bluebird Society. They have lots of great information on putting up boxes for bluebirds, how to construct them, where you can buy them. And if you want to go as far as to monitor them, like we do here, there's a lot of other places that you can get great information to know the proper way to do that, like Nest Watch, which is a Cornell program. Providing these boxes gives these birds another way to produce, breed, and boost their populations. This especially was the case with the bluebirds. Their population was really low, really dwindling because of the lack of natural cavities. And once bluebird boxes and that whole project kind of spanned out across North America, those populations rebounded just because they actually had places to nest. So providing boxes like this really help these species out.
All right, well, great. Thank you, Tara and Zach, for putting that video together for us today. Now, as we've learned a little bit more about what's going on at the sanctuary in terms of our monitoring projects and just birds that are nesting there in general, let's explore what nests we might be finding in our own backyards or your front yard, or even in an old pair of shoes that you might have left outside. And so the first one we're going to cover is a very common bird you typically would find in a residential area, our American robin. Surely you guys have probably seen these before, especially after it rains, perhaps plucking worms out of the ground. And so the type of nest that they will be building is a cup-shaped nest. So it almost looks like a bowl. It's that classic nest that we think of. And what's really interesting is that it's primarily the females that will be building these nests, and they'll actually start from the inside and work their way out. And so the females will collect dead grass, twigs, but they can even use materials like paper, feathers, roots, and more. And they will begin to press that into a cup shape using the wrist of their wing. And so once the cup is formed, the female robin is going to go and collect mud from worm casings and things like that, and will kind of surround our nest. So you can see that this is her collecting materials. And then the next photo is really great to show just the amount of mud that they're adding to their nests. And the reason that they're adding this mud is it allows the nest to become more heavy and more sturdy, and it also binds all of those materials together. Once they're finished with this, they're going to actually collect some dry grasses and line the bottom. And so as you can see, they have beautiful eggs. You've probably heard of robin egg blue. And so they really do have these nice blue colored eggs, and they're quite small. They're about the size of a quarter. Now, where are they going to be building these nests? Oftentimes you'll find them on the lower half of a tree, or they could be on one or several horizontal branches that are kind of hidden and encased by leaves to kind of camouflage them a little bit. But robins are not picky. They can get very creative. And so they've been known to build their nests, and I'm sure you may have seen this before, on gutters or even outdoor fixtures or even on a window pane. So another common bird that I particularly have seen quite a bit in my own backyard recently is the smallest woodpecker of North America, our Downy Woodpecker. And so Downy woodpeckers are cavity nesters, like our bluebirds, like our kestrels, and they typically will nest in dead trees or dead parts of live trees. So if we look at this next photo, you can see exactly why they choose those types of trees. When they choose a dead or dying tree, typically the wood's going to be a lot softer and it's easier to excavate. So you can actually see the wood chips flying off of this tree as this downy is starting to make a hole for the nest. And what's really cool about these guys is that unlike the robin, both the male and the female will actually excavate their nest hole together. And trust me, two is better than one in this situation, because it can take them about 1 to 3 weeks to build their nests. And so as you can see in this kind of diagram of a downy woodpecker's nest kind of inside of the tree, they'll place an entrance hole that will be about 1 to 1.5 inches. So really quite small. Again, they're the smallest woodpecker in North America. But inside, those cavities can range between 6 to 12 inches deep. And as you can see, as you move down, it's actually getting wider. And so that really is just providing more space for the eggs. They'll also line the bottom with wood chips, because that also helps stabilize the eggs and helps to keep them slightly warmer. And their eggs are small, and they unfortunately don't have the pretty colors like our robin. They're mostly going to be a plain white color. So again, this is a very common bird that you could see at home. So make sure you keep your eyes out for this one.
All right, so another common backyard bird that I love to watch in my own backyard is going to be the Carolina wren. So they will use existing cavities, and then they will build actually like what's often like a dome-shaped nest where they can have a side entrance to go in and out of. So they're pretty funny birds. So what they'll do is actually the male will start a few different nests in different places and different locations. And then he shows them to the female, and she will be the one to select the final location. Once they have a final location selected, they'll work together to use twigs and leaves, grasses, as well as softer material like moss, hair, and snakeskin. They'll build the nest, and then they will actually use all sorts of different locations. So like I said, that just needs to be like an existing cavity. So they've been known to use old woodpecker holes. They might use upturned roots of trees and just nestle in there. But they've also been known to use boots and coat pockets that have been left outside as well. And if you're looking for a Carolina wren nest, you should look around 3 to 6 feet off the ground. So this is a nice picture of that dome-shaped nest with a side entrance. And then this is a nest that's been built in the back of a pickup truck. Again, that good shot of that side entrance that they have, an old boot. So they can get really creative, and they have quite beautiful eggs as well. So they're kind of beige colored with some red speckling. Another popular bird that everyone has, been really excited about showing back up here in the St. Louis region is going to be the ruby-throated hummingbird. So hummingbirds are very small birds, of course, so they have a very small cup-shaped nest. They're typically about 2 inches across and 1 inch deep. The female builds them, and it takes about 6 to 10 days, and she uses plant down like thistle and dandelion, but we'll also use things like spider silk. Once the sort of framework of the nest is built, she'll use lichen and moss to camouflage the nest. And one thing that I think is really interesting is that she will actually kind of tamp down the bottom of the nest where the eggs will be laid, but will keep the sides of the nest pliable and flexible so that it kind of expands as the baby birds grow. So if you're looking for these in your backyard, you should look around 10 to 20 feet off the ground in deciduous trees on a horizontal branch. But they have been known to nest all the way up to like 50 feet in a tall tree. So here's a nice photo of that nest. You can see the plant down that's been used and the lichen surrounding it. It's a nice photo for scale. And again, great shot of those plant fibers. And then they have a really small egg, of course, and it kind of just looks like a bean. It's really clean white looking. All right, so now that we've kind of talked about some common backyard nesters that you might be seeing, we also want to talk about how you can help nesting birds at home. So one way you can do that is by putting up nest boxes in your backyard. And this can be especially helpful, as we've talked about, for those cavity nesting birds like bluebirds, as well as screech owls like the one pictured here. There are some important responsibilities that you'd be taking on if you do put up a nest box. So we want to really encourage you to be good landlords, keep the nest box clean and watch out for predators. There's of course some other things to consider if you do put these up in your yard, but it's a great way to help birds that are cavity nesters. We do have some instructions for how to build a screech owl box on the Audubon website, and I've linked that article here. Another way that you can help is simply by planting native trees and plants. This is important because as we've talked about, birds are building their nests in trees and plants. So they're using them for structure to hold the nest, but they also use those plants to gather materials. So that plant down and other materials that are helping to build the nests. And then one last way that you can help is by participating in Nest Watch, which is a community scientist project run by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and I've linked the website here. Through Nest Watch, you can get certified to observe nests in your backyard or out in the community. There's a lot of training that's involved, but it's a great way to actually make observations and then log data that scientists are using to help understand population trends in nesting birds.
All right, so if you're hoping to observe nests this spring, it's important to be responsible as you do so. So we have a couple of tips for you on the slide here, and I'll highlight a few for you. One is do not handle the eggs or young. So it can be tempting if you do see a young chick on the ground, but it's important to not touch those. Another is to supervise children that are making observations. Also, something else to consider is avoiding certain times of the day to make these observations of nests. So try to avoid early morning or, for example, bad weather. Another question that might pop up is what should you do if you do end up finding a bird? Well, there are luckily a lot of resources out there for you. And so if you look on the slide here, we provided a link. And you can check out what our local wild bird rehabilitation has to offer for resources on what you should do if you find a bird. And you can always call the number on here too. They are locally in the St. Louis area. All right, so now we have time for our live Q&A. So we will be taking questions from the Facebook live feed and hopefully answer some for you guys.
All right, I got a few questions here that I will start handing out to you guys. So first question, Emily, if you want to take this, what do killdeer nests look like?
Awesome. Yeah, so killdeer nests are really cool and they are very great at camouflage because personally I've walked up upon several killdeer nests and couldn't even see them. And so what they look like, as Michelle mentioned earlier, is it's a small depression in the ground and they often collect lots of smaller rocks and pebbles to make that. So oftentimes they actually like to nest at the sanctuary in our picnic kind of area where we have lots of rocks in different places. And so they'll collect those rocks, make that small impression, and then lay their eggs. Now their eggs are very speckled and they have a lot of like colors as the ground does. So that's really what contributes to the camouflage aspect of those egg layings. And that's really important because they are nesting on the ground. So they do have to worry about predators and things like that.
Thanks, Emily. All right, I have another one about killdeers. So will they actually attack a predator if they get too close to their nest? Michelle?
So basically, what the movement that they do is really to frighten and startle off a predator. So I haven't seen them actually attack a predator. I suppose if they got close enough, they probably would try. But generally that movement that they're doing is trying to actually lure them away, the predator away from the nest. So it's just kind of to distract rather than to attack.
All right, thanks, Michelle. So Deb had a question that I'm going to answer regarding a cardinal who had nested by her holly outside of her front door and who's no longer, or they haven't seen her in a couple days. And so ultimately what could be going on there, and you're making a lot of great assumptions in your question here and your comments. It could be that the mail carrier chased her off if she felt too threatened and she didn't feel like she would have a successful season laying eggs, then they're not going to take that risk. They'll go find somewhere else. It could be very well that she just wasn't successful. Maybe her mate got predated and that's why she never got to the egg laying phase of it. A little bit sadder, but it does happen quite often, especially in residential areas with things like cats everywhere. But other than that, she might come back, something else might try to use the nest. You might get a different cardinal pair that sees it and kind of fixes it up and uses it, but definitely leave it hanging around and keep an eye on it. She could very well come back. So let me see here. Karen had a question about the tree swallows, I think over at Riverlands. She's wondering whether or not they were using the Bluebird boxes or the gourds. Since I've been out there a couple times a week, I can say that As far as I can tell, they've been hanging out mainly around the Bluebird boxes, while they do perch up on our purple martin colony gourds that we have. And you know, they come in and out. I haven't seen too much activity with them starting to nest. That being said, I haven't seen too many purple martins, so there's probably going to be a decent number nesting in our martin gourds again this year. So let's see what else.
Kara, I saw that Karen also had a question about whether or not Carolina wrens and house wrens can share territories and successfully nest. Can you speak to that?
So I'm going to try to come up with my best answer. I don't know their territory size too much when I've worked with nesting wrens in the past. You know, they had plenty of room between the boxes, so there's plenty of territory there, so that there really wasn't that much competition. You know, in most cases, it kind of just depends on the species. Of course, you see things like tree swallows, and they're really communal. They don't mind nesting right next to another tree swallow pair. Wrens, as far as I've seen, can be a little bit more territorial. You know, some people have had bluebirds and bluebird boxes, and then wrens will come and chase them off. And so my best guess, and again, this is my best guess off of what I know, probably not very likely to share their territories. They'd probably want some decent distance between them. But of course, that depends on the proximity of the nests to each other and the resources available. Let's see. I see one other question, and it's and I think we can all answer this separately. What's your favorite nest box using bird? And is it the tree swallow? Me personally, I like the tree swallows because of all the feathers they use. If you've never seen a tree swallow nest, it's made of mainly dried grasses, but they line the very cup with a whole bunch of feathers, and they'll actually play with those afterwards. Which is just adorable. But it's like they have a nice fluffy down cup to just lay their eggs. It's really soft. Emily, Michelle, do you have a favorite nesting bird?
So I'd say like one that stands out to me are wood duck nest box, just because I think when we think about nesting birds, I don't typically think about ducks as much. And so I think it's a really beautiful bird, and I just love to watch them and see them nesting. And so that's one of my favorites.
It's hard to choose a favorite, but the one that's been on my mind lately is a screech owl, because I've been planning to put up a screech owl nest box in my own backyard.
All right. Nicole, your question, what is the bird on the screen? That is a tufted titmouse. That's one of our many cavity nesting birds. They'll use nest boxes as well. They're fun. They're very good parents, very protective. Let's see, any other questions? All right, it looks like it's it for now. Michelle?
Yeah, if any other questions come in, we'll be sure to answer them in the chat. But I'll pass it back over to Emily.
All right, thanks guys. So as a reminder, you can tune in every single Friday at 2 p.m. for our Bird Friendly Fridays. And next Friday, May 15th at 2, we will be hosting Backyard Birding for Kids. And this is going to be a really fun presentation. We're going to be showing you guys how to make a fun craft to get you prepared for exploring birds outside. And so we really hope that you can join us on Facebook Live next Friday at 2. And here are our sources. And once again, we really just want to thank you guys for joining us again for our Bird Friendly Friday this week. We really hope that you learn more about nests and our monitoring projects at Riverlands. and how you can help nesting birds this spring. So we really do believe that it's people like you that can truly make a difference for birds. And we hope that you try out a few things that can help our nesters this season. And so we hope to see you guys next Friday at 2 p.m. and we hope you have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.